Okay, so in this video we're going to do all the chords and sort of internal forms of the development of the first movement of Mozart Piano Sonata in B flat, K333. We did the exposition, all of it in a different one. Hi, cat. Here we go. So just to begin with, I'm going to play this for us. So here we go. Okay, and that's it right there. Okay, and we can just start plowing through this, but I think it'd probably be good if we divided this up into sections. So there's a beginning part of this development where it seems like we're in F major, like we ended the exposition in. That would make sense right here. And then we can hear, after playing around with parts of the original motive, that we get a hard cadence right here. Then we have a new section, okay? And this is clearly in F minor, so he's gone just mode shifted right there. And then there's a lot of soup here, and we're going to find that it depends on how you want to look at analysis. I think there's a good argument to be made to say, like, all the stuff that keeps moving and things like that, you could just say it's all gobbledygook. Kind of like if you had caught and were cleaning a fish, sorry if this upsets people, but it's not a bad analogy. You cut the bottom open, you scoop all the parts you're not going to eat out, and you call it all fish guts. But, you know, there's stomach and there's liver and there's all these different things in there that if you want to go in, you can find individual pieces. And I think the same thing could be said from about here till a little bit later on the next page. You could look at it and just say it's all one piece of stuff. But when we get in here, I think there's an argument to be made that there's actually some subcategories or areas in here as well that we'll get to. But when we get there, I'll show you what they are. We know that there's definitely, I don't know if I can find the piece of page that we're working on. Hold on a second. Same page. Hold on. I got duplicate pages here. There we are. Sorry. There it is right there. So, but we can definitely say that there's like a new section that starts right here after this cadence. And then it probably changes after that cadence right there. And then we're back to the original material. We're out of the development into the recapitulation at that point right there. Now, like I said, we can divide that earlier part up. So let's just sort of dive in and start at it then. Okay, I'm in key of F, right? Bass clef here. This is just a 1 chord, right? You can see that right there. This is a 5/7 chord. You've got your in the key of F, so we've got our C and our G and our B flat and our E. If you don't feel like that's important, then you could call this a 7 chord, I guess, if you'd like to. You know, so I'll put here, you know, 5, 4, 3, or could be a 7, right? It'd be like a 7 diminished 6, right? Either one of those is fine. And then here's definitely sort of the same thing again. Same pattern down an octave as he keeps playing with these things. So 5, 4, 3, or 7 diminished 6, depending on how you want to feel about the C that was that was there. Maybe not, hey? And then here, we should be going 5 to 1, right? Which should be an F chord. And what we have here is, and this is a trick Mozart will do throughout this development in order to keep going with forward motion and sort of tripping ahead all the time. Should be an F chord here, should be a 1 chord, but instead we have an F sharp, A, C, E flat, which is a F sharp diminished 7. And that, I guess you could call the deceptive progression, but that is 7 diminished. Well, there's the A there, so we're going to call it 6/5 of G minor, which is 2 in this key, right? And there's my G minor chord right there, G, B flat, and D, right? And this is sort of the top side of that as well. So there's my 2, and it's in first inversion. And then here we have a C and an E and a G and a B flat. So there's my 5 chord that you'd expect with a 7. And that should also go to a 1 chord. However, it keeps doing this thing. Again, the development section is supposed to be often fluid and moving and keeping us changing keys and guessing and things like that. So instead of going to a 1 chord here, which 5 should do, instead we have a B, D, F, A flat. So that's a B diminished chord. So that will be a 7 diminished. Now B would be of C, right? So 7 diminished, 6/5 of C, which is 5, right? It's kind of a little sequence here. He's gone 7 diminished 6/5 of 2, and then starts to round it out and goes 7 diminished of 5. And here, instead of a straight 5 chord, this is my F in inversion, so that's 1, 6, 4. These are probably non-chord tones, and these ones are the chord tones, and so I have my 5, 7 right there. And to please the theory gods, we'll put a bracket here and call that all 5, okay? Which is why 7 diminished of 5 goes to 5 right there, right? And then we have 1 right there, okay? However, we mode shift, and this is our next part. So I'd call this like section or subsection number 1 of the development. Then I'd call from here over subsection number 2 of the development. And the beautiful thing about this kind of music is you can kind of look at the left hand. It's giving us this Alberti bass figure, this, and it's like you don't have to even look at the top. It's not that it's inconsequential. It certainly changes the way it sounds depending on what you write up here, but this is like somebody strumming a guitar. Regardless of what you sing above it, it's still that chord. This is all F minor chord. So this is an F minor chord that just keeps going and keeps going until right here, right there. And all of a sudden we have a G, B natural, D, and an F. This is a G7 chord. Now, here's why, for myself personally, I'm going to identify some internal structures in this sort of fluid area that's not easy to hear unless you're good at hearing keys and 5/7 chords, which just takes a little bit of work, a little practice. But every time we have a 5/7 chord, you're redefining a new key. And if I had to say what's one of the most important defining factors of finding subsections of the development, it's what key are we in? We change keys, okay? So I feel like we're changing from F major to F minor. It's not a modulation, but it is a mode change or key change, right? And then from here, this could have been like a 5 of 5, I guess. But when we get here, we'll find that, well, let's just chase it through. There's a G chord here, G chord here. It changes a little bit right here. This would suggest we're in C minor. And when we get over here, there's a brief C chord, right? C, E, G, E, that kind of thing. So that is C for just a moment. So it's like 5 of 5 going to 5, but then it immediately says, oops, I was kidding. It's a C minor chord. And that just feels like we modulated the key of C minor more to me. It's very brief. It's very fast. If you want to say it's all fish guts and doesn't need to be identified, that's fine. But I'm going to call this, you can call this 5 of 5, right? If you'd like. And you can do the same thing over here if you like. But at some point, I feel like that equals 5/7 in C. And when we get there, there's a C chord, but then it changes to 1 minor. So C minor is just not what we're expecting. Like, we should be having a C major chord. This just, you can call it a minor 5, but it doesn't really track or make sense in the key of F. We've changed keys. This whole thing is about starting in F minor and then getting ourselves to C minor. That's our cadence right there. Big extended 5 chord for us to hear, and then boom, arrive. Now, I know that the music is moving forward at breakneck speed, so you don't have the nice clean cadence that happens after a figure like this. But harmonically, he sets us up for a long, intentional G7 chord, shows us the A flat, which would be from C minor, not C major, and then plants us on a C minor chord. So I feel like this is 5-1. Whether you want to go altered chord as a pivot chord, or you just want to say he changed key, that's up to you, right? Okay, and I would call that like my end of my second part right there, right? And I call this a new section. I think there's a fair argument to say that from here to here you could say no, it's all the same, but otherwise, I mean, it's sort of, we run out of, like, you can do that forever and then say it's all just one big super C. Okay, all right, so here is an E flat minor chord. Okay, and when we hear it, it sounds weird because we think we're in C minor after going G7 to C minor. E flat minor does not fit in the key of C minor, right? It should be E flat major. So we've done some kind of mode shift, or we've changed key again. And just let me show you how that works down here. Right after this, then we have an F7 chord right here, right? So F7, and that's another dominant, and it goes on for this long. It tells me I should be going to B flat. And this also sort of indicates B flat minor, right? Because if you think about this, this would be 4, 6 because of the inversion in B flat minor, which is a mode shift from the original key, right? And we want to play around with closely related keys and mode shifts, major and minor, from the original key. And we have like the minor version of the dominant, and now we have the minor version of the original tonic, and that's a 4-6. And this is my 5-7. And again, it's not brief. He holds that out for a long time, so we can't miss it, right? Now we should go to a B flat chord here, right? But we don't. Instead, we get a D, F sharp, A, C. That's a D7 chord. And that would mean that we're in the key of G, and probably G minor because that's relative minor to the original tonic B flat major, right? So this is a deceptive progression or cadence as well. See how he does this? He sits you on a dominant chord, like up at the, and then says, like, he says dominant chord, and this is psych. You don't get that, right? So yeah, like he did up here. He's going like 5 chord up here, and then we should get a 1, but then he says, nope, something slightly different. And then same thing here, we should get a 1 chord coming up to this 5, and he goes, nope, something different. So it's kind of the same here. He says you have a 5 chord in the key of B flat, probably minor because of this, telling us it was that way. And then, although there's A's here now that maybe fight against that, but then he goes, you should be getting a B flat chord. He goes, nope, it's something else. Now, deceptive cadences and progressions are when you have something that would make you feel like you've got a 5-1. It's got a leading tone in it. You're feeling like you're going to end up on the 1 chord, and then you get something different. Usually, or most commonly, it's a sub-median to a 6 chord, but it doesn't have to be. And in this case, this tells me that we went, oops, this is going to be all over YouTube forever. Oops, I'm in G minor, right? That's what happened. So all of a sudden, G minor, and this is my 5, and we're in first inversion, 6-5, right? And that will bear out because the next chord is the G minor coming up, okay? So that's why I kind of feel like this is another little subsection right there, right? Now, maybe we've changed key again. We could call this a new section. We'll see, all right? And then we go on to the next part. So remember, I had the D7, well, in 6-5 inversion just before this, and all of a sudden there's my G minor chord right there, right? G, B flat, D, right? So there's my 1 chord right there. Now, As we get over to here, this is a 5 chord right there. It's D, right? So I guess it hasn't really ended there, just the texture is ended there because we stay in the same key, right? This is a D minor chord, so I guess it's a minor 5 going down. It's not functioning as a dominant. And this is an E diminished 7 chord. I'm going to be honest, it doesn't function, right? It should be like 7 of F. That's not going to happen here. We don't have an F chord anywhere. And Costco will call this a double diminished 7 chord and put a bracket around it. And then you can call it a passing chord because G, F passing E to E flat to D. Or you could call it a common tone diminished chord or linear diminished chord because it has common tone D with all of these chords coming through here like that. Not here, but you know, and so but it's a linear chord. It doesn't function as a 7 of anything. It's just a useful passing chromatic thing that he does here. This is fun right here. This is flat 6, sharp 4, and 1. That means it's an augmented 6 chord. Okay, and now you could say, well, is it doubling? You know, is it like B flat, so German, or is it A, so it's French, or is it G, so it's just Italian? You could say all of the above, but this figure of German to 5, and then over here, I gave it away, it's German to 5, is easy. It's like the same thing when you listen to it. And you can see here that we go from the C sharp and we leave up to the B flat. And that really feels like the important note. And I feel like that's going to be the same right here, right? So I'm going to call this German augmented 6, right, 5, okay? And then from here, they add the 7th, finally, no C sharp right there, so you could throw a 7 on there, right? So it's 5, 7, right? So it starts as a 5, turns into a 5, 7, and I can put that on there as well if you want. And then it comes to an E flat chord, E flat G, G, right? That kind of thing. Feels like it's going to be a 6 chord, and 5s are allowed to go to 6. However, when we get over here and we add the C sharp to it, now it becomes German again, because German is a poorly spelled dominant 7 chord on flat 6. And so you have the 6 major triad. Then we get over here, we add the B flat, so it completes the triad, and C sharp makes it German. So 5 turns into 5, 7 and goes to 6. 6 goes along, turns into German, and comes back to 5. And we play this game. Mozart has landed here, and he's trying to get us back to our original sort of key so we can get us home and back, and so he'll stretch this out. It's like he laid in a scaffolding of 5 for all of this and said, I better ornament it or make it pretty sounding, otherwise people will get bored, right? So he's framed in an extended sort of 5 chord, 5 chord, 5 chord, 5 chord, but it says that's too boring, so let's go to the 6 and then turn it into a German and come back. And then this will become my 5, 7 right here again, and this will become an E flat chord again, so, you know, 6. And, you know, this kind of sounds the same, but it reaffirms that this really was, you know, E flat, G, B flat, change of clef right there, because we see the B flat. Here it's revoiced, right? Okay, and then this turns in with the C sharp right there, and the B flat and the E flat turns into another German augmented 6. And then he gets to here and he goes 5, 1, 6, 4, 5, 1, 6, 4. And you know, these are depends on what textbook. Some people call them neighbor chords because the notes go up and down like neighbors, and I think Koska Payne calls them a pedal chord because the bottom note holds out common like a pedal tone. Either one's fine, right? But again, 5 chord, 5 chord, 5 chord, we better ornament it so it's a little interesting until we get to there, and that's great. So we have a 5 chord here and we have half cadence. This whole thing was in G minor. That seems pretty good. You know, in retrospect now, since I see how long that kind of went, I kind of feel like this was 3, and now again, it's fluid and fast, but I think the proof comes when you say, well, what key am I in? And every time it changes key, the composer's probably doing something else. I guess if it was a quick circle of fifths or something, an argument could be just made nice, just doing secondary dominants. But in all cases here, he holds out like a dominant chord forever, right? And then goes there. And then he gets to here and holds out a dominant chord there forever. And then here, he does the deceptive thing and starts on a dominant chord right there, right? So, you know, he's never landing on the 1 chord a lot or staying there long because he wants us to have this forward motion and this instability that you know, we go through, it makes it exciting. But I think this, we're gonna call that the end right there, and then this is the G minor part, so we'll call this section number 4 right there. Okay, so 1 starts at the beginning of this, 2 starts when it goes to F minor. We're going to call 3 when this will be like F minor changing to C minor, and then this will be E flat minor chord, so B flat minor, and then changing to G minor, right? And then from here, this last section we're going to call 5, right? This is our retransition back to the original key. So, notice the clef change. Okay, this is an F chord with a dominant 7th on top. So F7. Hey, we're back in the key of B flat. Okay, so B flat major, which we kind of need. But don't worry, you're never actually going to get a 1 chord until we go back. So this extended piece is in B flat major, but so as to not feel like we've already arrived and then undercut the re-arrival of proper B flat chord here, this whole little transitional or retransitional section just sticks on the dominant chord for most of this. And I'll show you how that works. So this is a 5/7 chord, F, A, C, E flat, and it's in second inversion, so it's going to be 5/7, well, 5/4/3, sorry, like that. And then here it does it, and it's just inverted the chord, so that's another 5 chord with the 7th on top. Remember treble clef, so there's my root. So now we're in root position, and then again, since he wants to drag out, extend, right? He's going to play a game with us again. So here's my 5/7 chord again, and it says G flat there. That's flat 6, and we just had a bunch of flat 6 here in the upper part with Germans, and so the very first thing you're thinking is, aha, he's doing German again, right? Because of the flat 6. But if we look at the actual notes here, we have a G flat, right? And then we have an E flat. So I'm just going to write these out. We've got a G flat and an E flat. That doesn't count. I don't think that counts. Don't think that counts. And then we have a C, right? And you'll see it again here, and you'll see it down here as well when it's done and revoiced, so we can confirm our notes. Sometimes I've cheated and looked ahead and said, what are the stable notes that were given right there? And they're back here. So this is a C diminished chord. Let's talk about how that functions for a minute. Well, it's not in the key of B flat major, is it? But it could be in the key of B flat minor, right? So remember, he's trying to get us back to the original tonic key so we can start the recapitulation. And he does, you know, we can say, oh, look, we're in B flat because this is my dominant chord here. But he has to undercut himself a little bit so that he doesn't arrive on a 1 chord and telegraph too much of B flat major before he gets here. So he does all these 5 chords without ever going to a 1. And now to dress it up, he's going to expand or modify the German idea that he had up here. So we still get the flat 6. We have that similarity. The E flat is flat 6 to the key of G minor, and this G flat is flat 6 to the there. And you know, they like to go back and forth between 5s, but it's just C diminished. Now, if we're in the key of B flat, then this is a 2, 6, 4, and it's diminished, which means that it's modally borrowed from B flat minor. This is another way that he's spicing this up so it doesn't feel like we're back to B flat major quite yet. Okay? And then he's just going to do it again. So this is borrowed from B flat minor, right? Not to arrive too quickly, and then when he just does it again. Remember that Mozart's an improviser. He has to write a lot of music, and so he gets these ideas and he says, I can noodle on this. And he says, that was good, let's do it again. So he starts from high, does this, comes down, does it again, and then does compacted or diminishes the amount of rhythmic time there, right? So it's twice as fast. But here we have another 2 diminished 6/4 from the relative, or it's not the relative, parallel minor. That means it's modally borrowed, right? And then we have our 5 chord again here. There's my 7th right there. And then it's just going to go faster. This is another C diminished chord. So 2 diminished 6/4, right? And it's modally borrowed. And here's my 5 chord again, right? So it's just contracting. Like he has this great idea, it sounds good, plays with it, and says, well, can I do it faster? What can I do to extend this out? Not anything revolutionary. Composers have been doing this for a long time, right? If you go back to the Baroque, they had terrace dynamics, so they could play something loud, and then they could play the exact same thing again, but quiet, right? And you'd go, oh, that's nice. It's not different in our time. Like, you could buy a T-shirt, you see them on sale, you go, oh, black T-shirt, I'll buy 5 of those, but I'll buy one of the red ones and one of the blue ones too, because black is what I want, but some days you may need something different. There are variations on the same shirt though, right? And 5/7 down here, right? And then this is on yada yada yada, and this is the recapitulation, right? And you will find that this is very similar to your exposition. We may or may not. I think we'll probably do a video for this too. All right. Now, if you're in my class, in addition to just knowing all this, and by the way, after you leave the class, or if you just disagree, you can disagree and say, no, this is too short. I want to have it all be one section and hear it that way. That's fine. But I want to point out that key centers are just really important in divining if you're in a new section in the development. There's not much else there. It's not like you can say theme 1, transition, theme 2, transition, and there's one key change between transition 1 and theme 2. They're changing key all the time. They're doing fragments all the time. It's really tough to distinguish. And this is, every development section is different too. So solid key areas, and I think are the way that we do that, even if it's elided or run over by the other material that's going on. So in our midterm, and you've got practice things up for this right now, we'll do spot listening, and so you'll have to be able to tell if we're in this section 1, F major, playing with the original head motive stuff, or if we're in section number 2 where it's F minor changing to C minor, right? Or if we're in section number 3, which briefly changes to B flat minor, right? Or we're in section number 4 where we get a deceptive progression, or oopsie doodle, into G minor, right? Which extends for a long time out to here, half cadence, and then B flat. But it's all in the dominant with some modally borrowed C minor stuff to throw us off the scent. So finally, when we get back here, it feels really refreshing to come back to plain old, clear as day, nothing fooling around, B flat major, right? Okay, right there. And that's what the test is. So it plays the excerpt and you go, it's this one, or that one, or that one. So we worked on this in class today with the people that were there. Seemed very successful. I wanted to make this video so in case you weren't in class, or maybe next year I'll just say watch the video and then let's talk about it. We'll see. All right, but there you go.